Okay, everybody. Today we're talking about the good old Federal Reserve. We all know it just raised interest rates 0.5%, which some say, hey, it's a great thing, but in some ways it's a bad thing. It means maybe things are cooling down. Just remember when the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates, he's going to lower expected rates. It means things are happening that are bad in the economy, namely for us, labor, people working for a living. So this episode here, I'm just gonna bring a little bit more enlightenment about how the Federal Reserve is really targeting us, the workers, saying, hey, inflation is because of us. We need to get wages down so inflation drops. Never mind how much money these guys print. Quantitative easing, all these billions over to start wars, fund wars, you name it. Let's look right here. U.S. Federal Reserve's Jerome Powell said his goal is to get wages down. Complaining workers have too much power in the labor market. Shame on the workers having power, for crying out loud. It really makes you wonder why the Federal Reserve, as well as elected officials, can't really organize an economy that works for everybody. So it's really, really amazing. And for nobody to really be out there really, questioning these motives is really unreal. You can look at Jim Cramer here. Oh yeah, the stock market's definitely not doing well today. But where was it at? Jim Cramer. Powell needs to bring wages down. Even though all the talking heads, it's because of wages. We need to suppress wages. So back to this article here. Powell urged there is a path which we would be able to have demand moderate the labor market and therefore, we have vacancies come down without employment going up because vacancies are at such an extraordinary high level. There are 1.9 vacancies for every unemployed person. So it makes me wonder, they're not really talking about welfare rolls either, or people on government welfare. Would these people still be on government welfare if all of these vacancies had a job worth going into work and working? Again, let's structure the economy that works for people. you know and this article here was back in May. This article here: Federal Reserve wants lower wages for workers but not Wall Street execs, pretty much sums it up, by Matthew Cunningham Cook. Perfect. Federal Reserve Chair and former private equity exec Jerome Powell has promised to tackle inflation by lowering workers' wages. At the same time, he has declined to implement a law to reduce skyrocketing paychecks of his former colleagues on Wall Street. Exactly. They don't care. And stock buybacks are one of the greatest tools for the wealthy to maintain power, to keep wealth consolidated. Instead of divvying up the profits to workers or part of it to retirement accounts or lowering their healthcare costs, no, they go to share buybacks, which definitely help, the top percentage shareholders and keep the wealth consolidated at the top. I tell you, Powell's focus on a painful path. Powell could crack down on Wall Street bonuses, call for the repeal of Trump tax cuts for the wealthy, demand the closure of private equity tax loophole, or use the Fed's power to unlock bank mergers. Instead, his anti-inflation campaign is focused on raising interest rates to reduce the money supply, a policy that tends to increase unemployment and put downward pressure on the rank and file workers' wages. Exactly. And this article here is from Seeking Alpha, and it is talking about how Jay Powell, it's all about wage inflation now. It's all about wage inflation now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. On November 30th, 2022, Fed Chairman Powell said wage inflation is the biggest concern based on four of the factors he had mentioned before. He reiterated the Fed will not lower rates until the labor market significantly weakens, which will probably take a while. So if you have, so this is just putting workers on edge. I mean, it's just unreal. Fed Chairman Powell's speech. He broke down the problem with in his goals over inflation into three different categories. He goes on to say that despite the tighter policy and slower growth over the past year, we have not seen the clear progress on slowing inflation. To assess what it will take to get inflation down, it is useful to break core inflation into three component categories. One, core goods inflation. washers, dryers, TVs. 2, housing services inflation. And 3, inflation in core services other than housing. So services inflation and housing is most likely, your carpenters, your plumbers, people like that. And then core services inflation is just about everything else. He goes on to say core goods inflation has moved down from very high levels over the course of 2022. He would expect housing services inflation to begin falling sometime next year. But he had a much different story in regard to core service inflation. This is what he really wants to start hammering down on. Finally, we come to core services other than housing. The spending category covers a wide variety of range of services, from healthcare and education to haircuts and hospitality. It's the hairdresser that's causing all this inflation. Yep, get it. They need to lower their cost. Yeah. This is the largest of our 3 categories, constituting more than half of the core PCE index. Thus, this may be the most important category for understanding the future evolution of core inflation. Because wages make up the largest cost in delivering these services, the labor market holds the key to understanding inflation in this category. Can you believe that? They make their own categories and they come up with their own definitions of problems, and solutions. It's just unreal. Never mind all the money they were printing. It's just unreal. The Federal Reserve raises rates and Congress just keeps on sending money overseas, pet projects, whatever, you name it. He blames core service inflation on wages and gave a number of factors causing it. 1, lower population growth. Well, maybe if people had better jobs, maybe they might feel more, you know, inclined to have bigger families, have more kids. But, the Federal Reserve's primary goal to put wages down and to put, lay people off, it's not exactly giving people the urge to, grow a bigger family. 2, lower labor participation rate due to excess retirements. Okay, so retirees' faults. You guys save too much money. We're too smart. Shame on you guys. So be careful. Also be careful on this. They may want to make retirement harder for everybody to keep people in the labor market in the future. A plunge in immigration. I don't know about that. There's many reports saying our borders are wide open. Deaths during the pandemic. Okay. Yeah, people are dying, but I think people died from car accidents and a lot of other things too. So it says the current labor a shortfall of roughly 3.2 million people. So this is obviously causing pressure on wage growth because there's less people doing certain jobs, probably in the trades too. You look at the trades, less and less people. Most guys I work with in the trades, they're 30, 35 years or plus or older. Very rarely you see anybody younger working in the trades. So, and speaking about spending money, let's conclude on this. They're getting ready to come up with a new balance sheet for next year, and Congress is just blowing it up. I think they extended kept the government open for another week or so until they get this spending bill pushed through. But he goes on to say, last night the Senate approved a 1-week extension of funding, therefore averting a partial government shutdown that was scheduled to begin this weekend. The measure gives lawmakers an additional week to negotiate and pass the more comprehensive omnibus bill, which funds all federal agencies through the fiscal year. And let's see if they go down here and talk about the money. It's just ridiculous. It's 3,000 pages. $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. But again, it is the wage earners' problem why we have so much inflation, and they need to bring it down. So that just about wraps up this video, everybody. It's always amazing. There's so many, there's quite a few articles out there, thank God, that are going on about the Federal Reserve and talking about how wages need to be lowered, people need to be unemployed. Do you notice how the Federal Reserve never talks about monopolies? How many industries in this company have been monopolized? With monopolies come higher prices for everybody. The bankers love monopolies. One of the reasons why. And who's the biggest banker of all? The Federal Reserve. So bankers love monopolies. They could keep all the prices in check. InBev is a great example. Look at all the beers they own. They can control their markets, their prices. I'm sure they have profits all the way up the line and adjust if need be. Same goes for healthcare, food, you name it. And they're not talking about monopolies. They're not talking about all these shareholder buybacks, which concentrates money at the top on an economy that works for them. So, because workers have been, their productivity has been through the roof for 30, 40 years, and how many are going into a secure retirement? How many would like to have bigger families? How many are just living from paycheck to paycheck? That's what the system's designed for, to get you living paycheck to paycheck and to be a consumer, dedicated consumer, go into debt, work to make that next debt payment. And guess who that's going to? The banks. They love it. It's all about interest to them. So, because banks love collecting interest. Look at the housing market. It's not about the property, man. It's about collecting the interest. They love collecting the interest. They love collecting the interest on the government, on all the debt. You know, it's not about anybody paying anything off. It's just about people paying the interest to them. So, but you won't hear them talk. You won't hear them talk about the monopolies and everything else going on that are increasing the prices. It's just a focus on labor or supply chain issues, mainly caused by government shutting or putting restrictions on labor and our ports or our infrastructure to get product to market. So, anyhow, thanks for tuning in, guys and gals. This is my first episode, so still working through everything. Still getting used to my camera up there. So please comment down below, and love to hear your thoughts on everything. So stay tuned for a future episode of God, Power, and Money. We're going to be getting into all kinds of things here. Getting the word out. Hopefully touching people, getting to think a little differently. So take care and enjoy the holidays, and I'll see you soon.